Commerce to order. I want to ask Mr. Robert Gribble if you would to call our.
Fred Berry.
Present.
Anthony Harris.
Here.
Jeff Duffer.
Here.
Clark McKinney.
Here.
Charles Rahm.
Here.
Robert Shackelford.
Here.
Mr. President, all board members are present via WebEx.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gribble. First off, I want to make a comment before we go any further. For those members of the public that may be watching, this is our first board meeting in this capacity via WebEx, and if you would, please bear with us. We apologize in advance for any technical difficulties that we may have along the way. Hopefully there will be none. And to members of the public and those that are on our call, to keep down background noise, if you would, please keep your device on mute, and that will help us out. Next, we have on our agenda, let's see, we need to, there is a statement of necessity about this meeting. Miss Elizabeth Bendel, would you like to address that?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to read the short statement. This is a telephonic scheduled meeting of the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers. Notice of the May 12th, 2020 meeting for the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers, including the date and time, was posted to the board's website on November 12th, 2019. Additionally, this month's agenda was posted to the website on May 7th, 2020. As there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity will be read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. According to the Tennessee Code annotated 8-44108B2, which states if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, Tennessee Code annotated 8-44108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. As stated, this is a previously scheduled meeting of the board that is now being held telephonically. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to conduct regular business, and voting will be conducted by roll call.
Thank you, Ms. Bendel. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt our agenda for today.
Mr. Chairman, this is Charles. I make a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Jeff Duffer, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rahm and a second by Mr. Duffer to adopt our agenda today. Mr. Gribble, you need a roll call for that also?
Yes, all votes will need to be by roll call. Fred Berry.
Approve.
Anthony Harris.
Approve.
Jeff Duffer.
Approve.
Clark McKinney.
Yes.
Charles Rahm.
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Okay,
Voted in favor, Mr. President.
thank you, Mr. Gribble. Next item on our agenda is to review and approve the January 14, 2020 minutes. I believe the board members have had those in advance, so the chair will entertain a motion to approve those as they are printed.
Jeff Duffer, motion to approve.
Charles Rahm, second.
Have a motion by Mr. Duffer and a second by Mr. Rahm to approve the January 14 minutes as they are printed. Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry.
Approve.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackford.
Yes.
President, all voted yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gribble. I believe, been informed that the February 11 board minutes will be available at our next meeting. So now we will move on to our legal report. Ms. Elizabeth, good morning.
Hi. Am I getting feedback? Can you guys hear me all?
You're clear.
Okay. So item number 1, I'm going to summarize these at a very high level. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask because it's a quite large report today. Item number 1 and item number 2. Item number 1 is funeral complaint 2019-09-2961 against an establishment with some disciplinary history. And then item number 2 is funeral complaint 2019-09-2151 against an expired apprentice funeral director. These were complaints that were received against the establishment and the expired funeral director alleging unprofessional conduct and a failure to provide for goods paid for as well as unlicensed activity. The respondent stated that the money that the complainant had paid was for cemetery merchandise and not funeral merchandise, and that there was an option to purchase, that was paid towards funeral merchandise, not cemetery merchandise, and that there was an option to purchase a headstone if the family would have liked to, and that the respondent did not respond to the allegation of unlicensed activity. These complaints were sent for investigation due to the allegation of unlicensed activity, and in 2020 February, a board field investigator interviewed and obtained documents from the various parties involved. The investigator found that the respondent, expired apprentice funeral director, had engaged in funeral directing without a license, that the respondent engaged in the practice of misleading or deceptive practices in violation of the funeral rule, and that the respondent establishment aided and abetted an unlicensed individual to practice in the profession of funeral directing. I did receive a question asking whether or not the apprentice funeral director's license was currently active, and it has not been renewed. It expired in 2001. It's legal's recommendation to authorize a formal hearing and authorize a civil penalty in the amount of $1,500 for the establishment. If you guys would like to approve or deny that, and then I can move to the apprentice funeral director.
Charles Rom makes a motion to accept recommendation.
Jeff Duffer, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom and a second by Mr. Duffer. Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
President, all members voted yes.
And then for complaint number 2 against the apprentice funeral director, it's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty in the amount of $500 based on the fact that they have no prior history.
Anthony Harris makes a motion to approve the recommendation.
Charles Rom second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harris and a second by Mr. Rom. Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, all members voted yes, but it's up to you to declare whether it's adopted or not. Both of
Okay.
those.
All right, motion is approved. Next.
Okay, item number 3 is funeral complaint 2019-09-7341 against an establishment. This was a consumer complaint alleging unlicensed activity. The respondent responded to the complaint and indicated that the consumer was aware that the employee was not a licensed funeral director and that a licensed funeral director was the one who conducted the actual funeral services. The complaint was sent for investigation, and in February 2020, a board field investigator interviewed and obtained documents from the various parties involved. During the investigation, the investigator found various violations, including the following: that the respondent knowingly permitted an unlicensed individual to engage in the profession of funeral directing, and that the respondent aided and abetted an unlicensed person to practice without a funeral license. I did receive a question asking whether or not the employee of the establishment was ever licensed, and they have never had a funeral director or embalmer's license. It's legal's recommendation for a formal hearing and to authorize a civil penalty in the amount of $1,500 plus the cost of investigation.
Charles Rom, Mr. President, this establishment, it appears, has a long history of disciplinary actions taken against it. With that being said, I would like for the civil penalty to be increased to $2,500 plus the cost of investigation.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom. Do we have a second?
This is Jeff Duffer. I'll second that.
I have a second by Mr. Duffer. Is there any questions or further discussion? Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
6 yeses, Mr. President.
All right, the motion is agreed to. Next.
Item number 4 is funeral complaint 2019-0951 against an establishment. This is a complaint that alleges that the respondent has been doing business unprofessionally and that there is an employee of the respondent establishment making funeral arrangements without a funeral director's license. These complaints were sent for investigation, and in December 2019, a department field investigator traveled to the respondent establishment to conduct interviews and obtain various documents. The investigator spoke to the listed complainant on January 23rd, 2020, and the complainant identified themselves and informed the investigator that they had not filed the complaint. The investigator found no violations, so it's legal's recommendation to close it.
This is Jeff Duffer. Ms. Bindle, if you don't mind, would you repeat that number? I know what it is, but the phone was ringing, and for clarification, but since this is being recorded, would you repeat that number?
Yeah, of course. It's funeral complaint 2019-092561 against an establishment.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Duffer.
Yes.
Anthony Harris will second that.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Harris. Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
6 yeses, Mr. President.
Okay, motion carries. Next.
Item number 5 is funeral complaint 2020-001471 against an apprentice funeral director with no disciplinary history. This was a consumer complaint against the respondent establishment alleging, I'm not sure why it says apprentice funeral director, President. It should be establishment. I'm not sure
Okay.
if everyone's seen that on their report. The it alleged unprofessional conduct and specifically that the consumer sister passed away in December 2019 and they did not receive the sister's ashes until January 2nd, 2020. The respondent employer responded and indicated that the family was informed of the delay due to holidays as well as various other issues, and that the establishment did refund the amount of money to the complainant and the consumer did receive the ashes. Due to no disciplinary action history, the legal's recommendation is for a letter of warning at this time.
Charles Rom makes a motion to accept recommendation.
Robert Shackelford seconds the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom to accept council's recommendation and a second. Shackelford, any questions? Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Mark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 yeses.
Motion is agreed to. Next, Ms. Bendel.
Items number 6 and number 7 are complaints 2020-006781 against an establishment, and then complaint 2020-006761 against the funeral director. These were complaints that were investigated at the request of a board staff to conduct an inspection of the respondent establishment as to whether the respondent funeral director practiced without a valid license during the period of October 1st, 2019 to November 19th, 2019. It was discovered that during this period, the respondent conducted 2 funeral services while his license was not active. The respondent establishment responded to the complaint and indicated that they were unaware that the respondent's funeral director's license had expired, and they apologized, while the respondent funeral director has not responded to the complaint at this time. I did receive a question as to whether or not the respondent funeral director's license was currently active, and it is. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty in the amount of $250 for the establishment. If you want to vote on that, or I can read the second one and you can vote on the both.
This is Fred Berry. Motion to accept your recommendation.
Charles Rom, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Rom. Any further questions? All right, Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Mark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackford.
Yes.
6 yeses,
Motion.
Mr. President.
All right, motion carries. Next is the
And then
funeral
the second
director.
complaint, correct. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty in the amount of $500 for failure to respond after receiving notice of the complaint. They have no disciplinary history.
Ms. Bendel, is this funeral director the manager?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Bendel, this is Anthony Harris. Have we still not received a response letter?
We have not. I'm so sorry. I meant to say that as well. We have not received a response letter as of today. I did check.
This is Anthony. I'll make the recommendation that we take legal's advice on the 500 and authorize a formal hearing.
Jeff Duffer, I second.
Charles Rom, second.
Okay, Mr. Harris, we have a motion by Mr. Harris to accept council's recommendation and multiple seconds. I think Mr. Duffer was the first one that came in. Any further questions? Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Have 6 members voting yes, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next.
Item number 8 is funeral complaint 2020-006811 against an establishment, and it has the same set of facts. A board field investigator was asked to conduct an inspection of a respondent establishment as to whether the respondent funeral director practiced without a license. During the investigation, it was discovered that the respondent funeral director conducted funeral services for at least 3 deceased persons during the time period that the license was expired. The respondent establishment responded to the complaints and indicated that they were unaware that the license was expired during that time. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize a civil penalty in the amount of $250.
Charles Rom, motion to approve.
Robert Shackelford, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Shackelford. Any questions or comments? Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 6 yes votes.
Okay, motion carries. Next, Ms. Bendel.
Item number 9 is funeral complaint 2020-006831 against the funeral director. And this was in a complaint, same set of facts. The board field investigator was asked to conduct an inspection of the funeral establishment as to whether the funeral director practiced without a license during October 1st, November 19. It was discovered that the funeral director had conducted 3 funeral services. Respondent establishment responded to the complaint and indicated that they were unaware that the respondent's funeral director license had expired, and they apologized. It's the same recommendation, authorization for formal hearing, and authorize for a civil penalty in the amount of $250.
This is Fred Berry. I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation.
Anthony
Charles
Harris,
Rom,
second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Harris. Any questions or discussion? All right, Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Next.
Item number 10 is funeral complaint 2019-100721 against an establishment. This is a consumer complaint alleging that the consumer had paid for her father's ashes in 2019 or November 2019, and as of the date of the complaint, they had not received the death certificates or confirmation that her father's remains had shipped. The respondent responded to the complaint and indicated that they were contacted by a third party to cremate the remains, and that they had shipped the remains as of December 18, 2019. I did speak with the consumer who indicated that they had since received their father's cremated remains and the death certificates in late December. Consumer also indicated that they received a full refund from the third party. It's legal's recommendation to close this complaint at this time.
This is Fred Berry. I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation to close.
Charles Rom, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Ron. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Next item.
Item number 11 is funeral complaint 2019-100-731 against the funeral director, and it is the same set of facts that the consumer had paid for her father's cremation in November 2019, and as of the date of complaint, she had not received them. The respondent has not responded at this time. So it's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty of $500 via consent order for failure to respond after receiving notice of an open complaint. This funeral director has no prior disciplinary history.
Anthony Harris makes a motion to authorize legal's advice there.
Charles Rom, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harris to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Ron. Any questions or comments? All right, Mr. Gribble, if you call a roll.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
President, 6 yes votes.
Okay, motion carries. Next.
Item number 12 is funeral complaint 2020-00-1851 against the funeral director, and this is a consumer complaint alleging that they had paid for her mother's cremation in late October 2019 and did not receive her remains until November 2019. Additionally, she did not receive copy of the death certificate. Legal spoke to the consumer in February 2020, and they indicated that they did receive the death certificates in January 2020. The respondent has not responded to this complaint at this time. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty of $750, including the $500 for failure to respond to the open complaint.
Charles Rom, motion to accept.
I have a motion by Mr. Shackelford to accept council's recommendation. Was there a second?
Charles Rom, second.
Okay, and a second by Mr. Rom. Any questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 voting yes.
Okay, your motion carries. Next item.
Item number 13 is funeral complaint 2020-00-1561 against the funeral director with no disciplinary history. This is a consumer complaint alleging that the respondent has been doing business unprofessionally. The complaint alleges that the respondent made inappropriate comments as well as did not provide a vault that was paid for. The respondent responded to the complaint and denied the allegations of inappropriate comments and indicated that the price, the vault had been reimbursed and that the respondent has not been in contact with the complainant since she was refunded the vault. This case was sent for investigation in March 2020. A board field investigator interviewed and obtained documents from the various parties.
Did we lose Miss Bendel?
Yes.
We need to give her just a few minutes to try to get back with us.
Mr. President, she has communicated with me and said that she'll be back momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Hello, are you with us?
Hi, I apologize. Sorry, my computer is not being great. Did you guys vote? I apologize.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Ms. Bendel, Robert Shackelford, regarding item number 3 in the respondents' comments,
Sure.
do you know what specific changes were made by the individual who was going to pay for the services? States that
I don't believe. Yes, I believe neither the complainant or the respondent, I believe, provided what specific changes were provided. I can attempt to look that up. Yeah, I'm looking at the respondent's response as well as, and it doesn't give specifics as to what changes were made.
The field investigator was confident that there was no, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Fred Berry. I make a motion to accept the recommendation of council.
Jeff Duffer, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Duffer. Any further questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Gribble, if you call the roll.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rahm,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
6 voting yes, Mr. President.
Okay, the motion carries. Next item.
Item number 14 is funeral complaint 2020-003061 against the funeral director. This was a complaint submitted by the Division of Vital Records and Statistics against the respondent funeral director, alleging that the respondent had various death records over the 5-day filing requirement. I apologize. The respondent responded to the complaint and stated that they did not refuse the training, but that they did have questions regarding getting doctors to sign the death certificate. The respondent indicated that they would get with staff to remedy the situation. This funeral director has no prior disciplinary history, so it's legal's recommendation to do a letter of warning.
Anthony Harris makes a motion to take legal's recommendation.
Okay.
Charles Ron, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harris to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Rom. Any discussion, comments? Okay, Mr. Gribble, if you call the roll.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
6 members voting yes, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Motion carries. Next item.
Item number 15 is funeral complaint 2020-0061 against an establishment. In January 2020, a board field representative performed a routine inspection of the respondent establishment. During the inspection, the representative discovered the following violations: that the respondent establishment had changed its physical address and had not reported, at the time of the inspection, had not filed an application for a change of location, that the respondent establishment did not have a fixed place of business, that the respondent establishment license was not available for inspection, that there were no embalmers or funeral directors licenses available for inspection, and that the current license and latest inspection report for the crematory facility was not available for inspection. The respondent has not responded to this complaint as of today. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty of $2,500 via consent order, including the $500 for failure to respond. I did receive a question about suspending the license of the establishment, and as the board is aware, there are certain legal requirements to do so, and it's a pretty high bar to reach in concerning whether the safety welfare is imperatively affected. So legal does not think at this time it reaches that level, but that is something the board may want to discuss.
This is Fred Berry. I got a question as far as the penalty of $2,500. Can that be increased?
If the board chooses to increase it, that whatever, it's legal's recommendation to do $2,500, but it may be increased, yes.
This is Anthony
Fred,
Harris.
this is Charles Rom. Fred, this is Charles Rom. What are your thoughts?
It appears to me, this is a pretty serious violation. And given the high bar as far as the suspension, and punitively speaking, I think raising the penalty might be appropriate here.
What dollar amount were you thinking about?
I'd say I'd recommend $3,500.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I'll make that in form of a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to increase, to accept council's recommendation, but to increase the civil penalty to $3,500. And we have a second by Mr. Rom. Is any further questions or discussion?
Anthony Harris, how long do we give them to respond before we take the next step?
We give them 14 days to respond to the initial letter. And then we send an additional letter, a last notice letter requiring them to respond. If they don't respond to the consent order, then we would move forward to a hearing. And I can't provide an actual timeline for the hearing due to the current state of things.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, Mr. Gribble, if you call our roll.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
6 board members voting yes, Mr. President.
Okay, the motion carries and we're ready for the next item.
Item number 16 is funeral complaint 2020-006721 against an establishment. This was a board field representative's routine inspection of their establishment. And during the inspection, they discovered that there were various death certificates that were not filed within the 5-day filing requirement, and that the preparation room was not maintained in an orderly manner. The respondent responded to the complaint and indicated that the funeral director who was responsible for the death certificates was no longer employed, and that the room has now been cleaned and organized. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty in the amount of $500.
Charles Rom, so moved.
Anthony Harris, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rom to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Harris. Any questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 members voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries and we're ready for the next item.
Item number 17 is funeral complaint 2020-006891 against the funeral director with no disciplinary history. This was a consumer complaint alleging unprofessional conduct. The respondent's attorney responded to the complaint and indicated that the friend who had filed the complaint did not pay for any services and was not a consumer of the establishment. Additionally, they indicated that the respondent was nothing but polite and answered all questions to the best of their ability. It's legal's recommendation to close this complaint after reviewing all of the documents provided.
This is Fred Berry. I'll make a motion to accept recommendation for closure.
Jeff Duffer,
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Duffer. Any questions? Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
6 board members voting yes, Mr. President.
Okay, the motion carries. Next item.
Item number 18 is funeral complaint 2020-007651 against an establishment. This was a consumer complaint, this was a complaint filed on behalf of a funeral establishment alleging non-payment for services rendered. The respondent responded to the complaint and indicated that the bill had been paid in full. They provided proof of such, and they indicated that they did not receive the bill in a timely fashion and that they were never contacted by the complainant regarding the late payment. It's legal's recommendation to close this complaint at this time.
Anthony Harris makes a motion. We accept the motion of closure.
Second by Fred Berry.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harris, council's recommendation, and a second by Mr. Berry. Any discussion? Mr. Gribble, if you'll call a roll.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Mark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 board members voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Next.
Item number 19 is funeral complaint 2020-01-1341 against an establishment. This was a consumer complaint alleging that they had paid for a direct cremation and that they did not receive the remains until February 11, 2020, when the deceased passed away on January 23rd. The respondent responded to the complaint and indicated that the remains had been received as of February 14th, and that they followed all procedure and returned all the consumer's calls. The consumer also provided additional follow-up information indicating that the respondent did not return any of the consumer's calls and that they had not received the death certificate. The respondent did contact the Department of Vital Records and obtain the death certificate. However, there was information that was incorrectly entered, and as of 3 weeks ago, the respondent had not returned any of the consumer's calls. It's legal's recommendation to authorize for a formal hearing and authorize for a civil penalty in the amount of $500 via consent order.
Ms.
Ms.
Bindle,
Bidberry, I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of council.
Ms. Bindle, this is Jeff Duffer. I've got
Hi.
a question. The respondent states that the procedure and all of the consumer's calls are promptly answered. You said that they've called again since that period, and have we heard anything back from them?
Correct. Yes.
Have they responded again?
Originally the consumer submitted a complaint that the remains had not been received. The respondent responded to that complaint and indicated that they had sent the remains and that they were answering all of the phone calls. And after that, the consumer provided an additional response indicating that they still hadn't received the death certificates and that when they attempted to contact the respondent did not answer. So that was the last information I had received from the consumer, and the respondent has not responded to the rebuttal.
Okay, I will second that.
Okay. I was reading that.
Fred.
Very.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion by Mr. to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Duffer. Any more discussion? Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Mark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 board members voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Ms. Bendel, next item.
Item number 20 is funeral complaint 2020-01-2251 against an establishment. And this was a complaint submitted by the USPS employee indicating that the respondent sent cremated remains not via express mail per the regulations. The respondent responded to the complaint and indicated that they did send the remains prior to express. However, the click and ship method machine selected priority for the label. The respondent also confirmed that the remains were received within 1 day and that they will give further training on how to use the click and ship method within the office. It's legal's recommendation to give a letter of warning at this time.
Okay.
Anthony Harris makes a motion. We take legal's recommendation, letter of warning.
Second by Fred Berry.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Harris to accept council's recommendation and a second by Mr. Berry. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 board members voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries, and I believe got one more item.
Yes, our final item. Item number 21 is funeral complaint 2020-016701 against an establishment with no disciplinary history. This is a consumer complaint alleging that their grandfather's death certificate was never filed with the state. The respondent responded to the complaint and provided documentation that the death certificate was filed. It's legal's recommendation to close this complaint.
Jeff Duffer, I have a question. Do we know why the grandchild made that statement when they had all the proof and the documentation and so forth? Why would they say that? Is it?
I am not sure. The complaint indicated other criminal matters that are under our jurisdiction. They just indicated that the grandfather's death certificate was never filed. They didn't provide actual facts as to why it wasn't filed. And the respondent gave a pretty lengthy timeline of events regarding the death and then also proof that the death certificate was filed.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion to approve it.
Anthony Harris, second.
Charles Rom, second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept council's recommendation by Mr. Duffer, and the second was Mr. Harris. Mr. Gribble?
Fred Berry. Mr. Berry, you vote yes or no?
Sorry, yes.
That's okay. I might not have spoken loud enough. Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rom,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 board members voting yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Bendale.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Mr. President,
Yes.
we have about a 5-minute recess, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We'll stand in recess for just about 5 minutes. Okay, we are back from our brief recess, and I believe the next thing on our agenda is the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Robert Gribble.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item is the legislative update. As you're well aware, because of all the circumstances, it also created some unusual circumstances for the legislature. But since we had our last meeting, House Bill 2784, Senate Bill 2538 was passed, and it was assigned public chapter number 625 by the Secretary of State. The other legislation is still pending, and none of that is passed. It's Senate Bill 1824, House Bill 2004, Senate Bill 2070, Senate Bill 1859, House Bill 1944, House Bill 1945. And of course, in your report, you have the link for the website so that you can do the search on the legislative bills if you have want further information about that. The licensee reports a report of licenses have been administratively approved by the Executive Director pursuant to Board Authority for the period of February 11, 2020 through May 8, 2020. You have an establishment who changed name and ownership, and then you have numerous individuals who obtained a funeral director and/or embalmer's license, and many of those through reciprocity and some through reapplication as well. The closed establishment report. 4 establishments have reported closing since the last board meeting. Gray Funeral Home at 132 Chapel Road in Gray, Tennessee. J.W. Atkins Funeral Home, 2510 12th Avenue South in Nashville. Roller Funeral Home, 3651 Austin P. Highway in Memphis. And Tri-Cities Funeral Home at 208 East Lane Street in Churchill. The disciplinary action report. This is a report of consent orders that have been administratively accepted and approved by the executive director pursuant to board authority and as reported on the March 2020 regulatory board disciplinary action report. And you have 2 individuals and a funeral establishment there. It lists their names, location, violations, and then in the action. Of course, that's available on the board's website under the consumer part. As far as the disciplinary actions, those disciplinary action reports are posted to the website the 15th of each month. Complaint report for this meeting today, we have 19 complaints that are open against funeral director and our embalmers, and 31 against establishments, for a total number of 50 complaints. Mr. President, that concludes my report for today, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that any board member has.
Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Gribble?
Motion to approve the director's report. This is Charles Rom.
Duffer, second.
Okay, thank you, fellas. We have a motion by Mr. And a second by Mr. to accept the director's report. If you'll call our roll.
Okay, I cut out, or my hearing cut out. Who seconded the motion, Mr. President?
Mr. Duffer.
Duffer. Okay, thank you. Okay, roll call. Mr. Berry,
Yes.
Mr. Duffer,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. McKinney,
Yes.
Mr. Rom,
Yes.
Mr. Shackelford.
Yes.
6 board members voting yes, Mr. President.
All right, and the motion is agreed to. Thank you, Mr. Gribble, for your report. Next is the approval of license applications, and I believe we do have some individuals. Let's see, I believe we have first on our list Donnie Hansel Bobo. Mr. Gribble, do you want to give us some background on this?
This is an application by Donnie Hansel Bobo of Mississippi, who is applying for a funeral director's license for reciprocity from the state of Mississippi. And based on the application, the board may consider, among other pertinent statutes and rules, and specifically examine the applicability of Tennessee Code Annotated 62-5-311B3. And that has to do with education requirements and making a determination as to whether the applicant meets the requirements for licensure.
Okay, thank you. I believe we got some of this morning. And is Mr. Bobo with us?
I'm here.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you want to, would you like to address the board just for a minute or two?
Also, Mr. Bobo, feel free to turn your video on while you're speaking, please.
I do have my video on. Is it showing up?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm gonna get some technical assistance in here.
That's okay.
It's on. I don't know why it's not showing up on your end, but it's on my side. You're not missing much.
All right, if you just want to introduce yourself to us and give us some of your background and.
Sure. I'm Donnie Bobo, and I just went to work at Forest Hill here in Memphis, and trying to get my license, obviously, from Mississippi. I've worked in Mississippi. I've been licensed for about 7 years as a funeral director. I worked at Hernando Funeral Home for about 9 years before I came here. And I had worked at Cutshaw Funeral Home in Iuka for 5 years. That was in the early 90s. Did that for 5 years. And then I was a United Methodist pastor for several years. And after that, I worked for the Medicaid office in Mississippi for just a short time before I went back into the funeral home and got my license. I have a bachelor's from University of North Alabama that's in communications, but I don't have any mortuary. I don't have a mortuary degree. I did the 2-year apprenticeship in Mississippi. Mississippi did require at the time, I think they've relaxed that a little bit, but at the time they required the national boards for funeral directors. So I did take those, and I have taken and passed the law exam here in Tennessee. So,
Okay, thank you. And the board members have any questions for Mr. Bobo?
This is Fred Berry. If you will, I'll move that we approve his licensure or reciprocity.
Anthony Harris seconds.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry to approve Mr. Bobo's application by reciprocity, and we have a second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? Mr. Greer, roll.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rahm,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, 6 board members voting yes.
Okay. Congratulations, Mr. Bobo.
thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Next on our list is Patrick Dwayne Cates. Do we have Mr. Cates with us today?
We do. Good morning, Mr. President, member of the board. Thanks for letting me be here this morning.
Thank you for being with us. Mr. Gribble, would you like to make a comment about this?
This is an application from Patrick Dwayne Cates, who now lives in Clarksville, Tennessee, and he's applying for his funeral director's license by reciprocity from the state of Kentucky. And his situation is the same as the previous applicant before you, has to do with the education requirement and the board's discretion in making a determination whether the applicant meets the requirements for licensure.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cates, would you like to give us a little of your background and
Sure, I'll be happy to. I've been in the funeral industry for 38 years in Kentucky. I've been licensed funeral director in Kentucky for 26 years. Did serve a 3-year apprenticeship and take the full boards pertaining to funeral directing in Kentucky back in 1994. Have recently, in the past 3 years, moved to Clarksville, and I am currently employed. I work weekends for McReynolds Nave Larson here in Clarksville. So I'm enjoying being affiliated with those folks, and hoping to receive my Tennessee license so that I can be of better service to them and my community through licensure in Tennessee.
okay, thank you.
This is Anthony Harris.
Motion to approve.
Anthony Harris will second.
Okay. I think we had multiple motions there, but motion to approve this application by Mr. Shackelford and second by Mr. Harris. Any further questions? Okay, Mr. Gribble, if you would call our roll.
Fred Berry,
Yes.
Jeff Duffer,
Yes.
Anthony Harris,
Yes.
Clark McKinney,
Yes.
Charles Rahm,
Yes.
Robert Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 6 board members voting yes.
Okay, the application is approved for Mr. Cates by reciprocity. Congratulations,
Thank you very much.
and thank you for being with us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
I believe we have The next is Gerald DeBose Bowen. Is Mr. Bowen with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. And Mr. Gribble, would you kind of give us just a brief rundown here?
This applicant is Gerald Boeing, who is from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and he's applying by reciprocity for a funeral director's license, and he is licensed in Louisiana at the present time. Based on the application, the board may, among other pertinent statutes and rules, wish to examine the applicability of TCA 62-5 317A2 and making the determination whether the applicant meets the requirements for licensure.
This is the same as the previous two.
No, sir. This one has to do with the conviction in the Fresh Start Act.
Okay, all right. And has council gone over the Fresh Start Act on this application?
The individual had checked yes to whether or not they had a previous license denied or suspended. Council did not receive any further information as to what license was denied or suspended in the past.
Okay, all right. All right. All right, Mr. Bowen, would you like to address the board and just give us a little of your background?
I would first off, thanks, Mr. President, and the Tennessee Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers for having me here today. I just moved here to the Nashville area, of course, Murfreesboro, about maybe 4 months ago, January. I moved from New Orleans, Louisiana. I was a funeral director at Lake Lawn Metairie Funeral Home in New Orleans for about 2 years. And of course, just situations led me to be here in Tennessee. The question that I responded yes to was in reference to other licenses. So I had spoke with Ms. Harsh and just was kind of getting an update with her over, what's the next step? What do I need to do? And then she had informed me, she said, well, you marked yes on your application. And I told her, I said, yes, I did. And she had responded and said, so have you ever had a funeral director's license revoked, suspended, denied? I said, no, I've never had that before. She said, well, you didn't need to mark yes on the application. And then I had told her, I said, well, it said other licenses. And so she read the question. She let me know. She said, okay, so yes, it does say other licenses. Have you had another license revoked, suspended, or denied? And I said, yes, I was an insurance agent in Oklahoma. I had marked on a question no to a yes answer. And so the state of Oklahoma had asked me, they fined me, they gave me a fine. But instead of me paying the fine, I wanted to have a hearing to explain why I had answered yes on that question. And so I had a hearing by my choice, and they did not approve, or they didn't agree with my reasoning for marking yes. And so they had me pay a fine and of course the cost of the hearing. And so that was settled. So when I applied for my Tennessee application for funeral director, of course, being honest, I did respond yes, even though I knew it wasn't in relation to, of course, a funeral director's license. And of course, this is where I am now. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And I did give, of course, a formal head to toe explanation of everything that you all have requested.
Thank you. Any of the board members have any questions?
This is Fred Berry. So approximately how many years was the situation in Oklahoma?
It was just renewal. It was maybe 2 or 3 months. It was when I had applied for a renewal, and part of that I'm sorry, did you ask me? I'm so sorry if I'm responding out of order.
Yeah, I was asking how many years ago that situation occurred.
Oh, it was in 2014, 2013 or 14.
I understand. Fred Berry, I'll make a motion to accept the application.
Jeff Duffer, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Berry and a second by Mr. Duffer to approve Mr. Bowen's application. Is any further questions or discussion?
Yeah, Mr. President, this is Charles Rahm.
Go ahead.
For the applicant, in your letters of reference and so forth, how long did you work with Lake Lawn Funeral Home and Cemeteries, and what did you do there?
I worked with them for almost 2 years, 2018 of July, and I was a funeral director.
Have you worked other places besides New Orleans? And, well, I guess New Orleans is the only place you work?
Oklahoma. So in Oklahoma and Louisiana.
How long were you employed in Oklahoma?
I started funeral service in 2011 and got my license in Oklahoma in 2013 or 14.
Mr. President,
Yes.
this is Robert Gribble. I have a question, Mr. Bowen. If you were licensed in Oklahoma first, is that license still active?
Yes, it is.
You did not provide us with any information concerning that license or any certification for us, did you?
No, I asked Mrs. Harsh or whoever I spoke with at the board what license I need to provide. They said your most recent license, which was of Tennessee, which was Louisiana.
The board policy is if you're licensed, especially wherever you were first licensed, normally you provide information regarding all of your states that you're licensed in, as well as whether or not there's been disciplinary action against those licenses or if they're in good standing in those states.
And I did try to do that. I asked them if they needed that license, and they just told me, they said, no, we only need the most recent state that you lived in.
This is Fred Berry. So your licensing is in good standing in Oklahoma?
Yes, sir, it is. I have my card, if you all would like to see that it is in good standing.
Mr. President, I would suggest to the board, if you're going to entertain a motion, that you entertain it. If you're going to entertain a motion to approve it, I would suggest you do it based upon written certification from the board in Oklahoma that the license is active and in good standing. Or if it's not active, it's okay, but we need, well, let me just say, typically we get a report from each state that the person is licensed in as to what their status of their license is in that state.
Okay, so in other words, the motion should be amended to say that we'll approve this license pending receiving notification from Oklahoma that Mr. Bowen is in good standing.
This is Fred Berry. I'll amend the motion to accept the application subject to the confirmation from Oklahoma board.
Does that sound correct, Mr. Gribble?
Of course, it's a discretion of the board members, but that's what we would normally do is get the information from the boards involved.
Okay.
Let me ask a question. Could that be done, Mr. Gribble, with a phone call to their director?
We need it documented, Mr. Berry, so that when we're audited, that we have a paper trail. It'd be preferable that it be
email.
Be an email. Yes, that would be fine. Something we can load to our license application so that we can show we checked it.
May I please speak, if that's okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is it okay if I provide my license from the state of Oklahoma?
I think what we need in the office is something documenting from the state of Oklahoma that your license is current and that you are in good standing. Just put in your file, as Mr. Gribble says, so that there'll be a paper trail.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is Jeff Duffer. I want to rescind my motion on that piece, or the second it.
Okay. All right. So we have, do we have a new motion or we have an amended motion, I guess, that this application be approved under the conditions that we get the proper documentation from Oklahoma and that Mr. Bowen is in good standing in Oklahoma also.
Mr. President, Jeff Duffer. Also, I think, when I'm looking at some of these documents, the Lake Lawn Funeral Home and Cemeteries, we have two recommendations or letters of reference here from directors. To me, I think we should have gotten some information from the Oklahoma place of employment, and then maybe even have gotten something from an owner of this funeral home there in New Orleans.
This Anthony Harris, I agree with that.
This is Fred Berry, but I don't think what the board requires states where reference letters has got to come to. Mr. Gribble, can you speak to that?
Yes, let me look at the rule real quick so I tell you correctly. While Mr. Bowen, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, we typically get letters of references from their place of employment.
Well, Mr. Bowen has been talking. I did go to the Oklahoma website, and I can verify that he has an active license in Oklahoma.
I'm sorry, my phone had cut in. Did you ask a question, sir?
No, I said I was able to go to the Oklahoma board's website and verify that you are licensed as a funeral director by their website, but we need written documentation that we can put in the file, just like we got from Louisiana.
Okay.
Mr. Berry, in answer to your question, the rule says that 2 letters of recommendation by a licensed funeral director and or embalmer which attests to the good moral character and competence of the applicant. Such letters shall be signed and dated on printed stationery.
So I'm looking back at this to see, do we meet those requirements?
I believe so.
It appears so.
Yeah, it looks to me that we meet those requirements.
The only thing I see is the second letter is not dated.
May I speak, please?
Yes, sir.
So Mrs. Harsh had, she told me that the 2 letters of recommendation didn't have dates on them, and they needed to be addressed to the Tennessee Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers. Of course, I let her know that, of course, that wasn't, the things that they wanted specifically in those recommendation letters were not clarified on the website. Of course, I talked to 2 or 3, people who worked for the funeral board, asked them exactly what they were wanting in those recommendation letters so that I can let my colleagues know exactly, of course, what you all are needing. So they did write those letters. She let me know that it needed to state certain things. And so, of course, I contacted Jamie Ballinger and Lydia DeSoto, and they rewrote those letters the correct way. I submitted those to Mrs. Harsh, and she let me know she did receive those letters. And she said that these, of course, would suffice. And of course, it would be presented to the board on the of course, today. So I did, of course, have those letters redone by my two colleagues who are licensed funeral directors and embalmers, and they have attached their business cards. So I don't know what more could have been done on those recommendation letters. I'm not sure what you all are looking for.
Mr. Bowen, this is Board Member Charles Rahm. I think what Mr. Gribble is, the direction he's going is the board doesn't want to establish a benchmark of approving applicants before the actual application is completely in order. As he indicated, it's normal process to get something in writing from the Oklahoma board, of which we don't have. So it just would keep us from, as I say, setting a benchmark of something that is out of the ordinary that we would have to possibly do again. We need to continue to do our process in the manner of which it's been set forth.
And I highly respect that, you all. I really do. I just want you all to know what I have done diligently on my part. When I first moved to Murfreesboro, I drove up here to Nashville, and I had spoke with the young lady because I wanted to know the thorough process as to what I needed to do in order to become licensed in the state of Tennessee. She let me know exactly what I needed to do. I did ask her specifically. I let her know that I was a licensed funeral director in Oklahoma and Louisiana. She said, your most recent state. So, of course, I told her that was Louisiana. After that, I made a phone call to the funeral board, spoke with several people. They did give me the exact same answer. They said it need to be from your most recent state. I would have been more than happy, very enthused. I have a extremely, very, very good reputation in Oklahoma as a funeral director. And again, that wouldn't have been a problem leading up to this day. Of course, mind you, I've been looking forward to getting a license number in the state of Tennessee for now a little while. So I was definitely not expecting this today. I would have presented all of this stuff to Ms. Harsh well before if I would have known anything, because again, the last thing I'm trying to do is not be licensed. I do need to work, and there are funeral homes that are waiting for my license number. Having said that, I'll be happy to get that information. I'll reach out to Oklahoma. But I am a licensed director there, non-active resident. I just got off the phone with the board not long ago there, or the funeral board. So again, I don't think that's going to be a problem. It may be more money involved. I don't know what they need in order to get that information over to you all. But I do have, of course, my renewal card, which is good through the end of this year. So, but I will definitely do what I need to do to get my license number, because again, I do need to begin work as a funeral director. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Any other board members have any questions or comments?
This is Fred Berry. I hate if there was a situation where there was some miscommunication there that it's going to delay him in getting his license. So my motion still stands.
Okay. Do we have a second? And wouldn't that, Mr. Gribble, would that not be the, according to Mr. Berry's motion, would that not be the quickest way to get this resolved, everything in order in Oklahoma?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, it cut out there. The quickest way to get it resolved in Oklahoma would be what? The email?
Situation taken care of rather than tabling this for a.
Yes, yeah, and I may be buffering or somebody else is. I'm not hearing everything, but what I think the question is, the board approve it pending the certification, and we could issue the license. Is that the question?
Correct.
Yes, I mean, the board's done that many times before.
Yeah, I just hate to see him put off another month. If we can take care of it, a little quicker.
I do too. This is Jeff Duffer, but I would like to see that second letter though dated. I mean, it should be dated. If we can get all that in order, I certainly agree that we need to go ahead and approve it.
May I speak, please? If you don't
Yes.
mind, both of those letters are dated. The ones that were resent to you all were the appropriate and the proper recommendations that Ms. Harsh had asked me to. So she's either got those, and she did let me know that she had those two letters. They were definitely what they were looking for, and that she would get that to the correct source. So I'm not sure exactly why you all don't have that with you, but she did make it very clear to me that she had those. I purposely called her to make sure that she did receive those documents and that they were exactly what was needed in order to be able to have a successful day today. And she did let me know that everything was fine. So I don't know if you're looking at the letter that was not done the right way, but just know I did give that to her and anything else you all are recommending.
Mr. Bowen, this is Jeff Duffer. The
Yes.
document that I'm looking at two references, and one of them is dated February the 5th by Miss Lydia DeSoto, and the other one is not dated. If we could get that dated and that could be a part of that motion, Fred, I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Bowen, if you could, if you have a copy of that, the correct letter that has the date on it, send that over to us. It may be that we failed to get it, or maybe that what's in our packet, we have the first letter and maybe not the second, but if you can get that letter dated, get a copy of that to us as well.
Do I just need to send that to Mrs. Harsh?
Yes, that'll be fine. Or Mr. Gribble, either one.
Okay. And I will be happy to resend that information to her again. Does Mr. Gribble have an email address that I can send that to today?
If you send it to her, she and I are communicating with Jabber now, Mr. Bowen. If you'll send it to her, I've asked her to double check and see if she has one that got failed to be loaded up to the file, and she's looking. And if you still have it, if you'll just scan it and send it to her. And I apologize for any miscommunication.
That is perfectly okay. That is, and I appreciate you all working with me today.
But if she has it, then I'll communicate with you offline after the meeting and let you know whether she has it or not. And if she doesn't, then you can just rescan that one back to her.
Yeah, it was the day before. She said, you have to get this to me by 4:30 today in order for it to be for the board on today. And then she said she would get this over to Mr. Gribble, the recommendations, and of course the new letter of explanation. So now that I remember the name that she mentioned, it was your name that she mentioned, she would get those two over. Yes, sir, I appreciate it.
And we got the letter of explanation and the other documentation. We may have just failed to somehow or another upload the one that the letter of recommendation is stated.
Yes, sir. Okay, I will get that to her again.
Thank you. We want to get you took care of as quick as we can.
And I really appreciate it. I would like to get to work as quick as I can.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Berry and a second by Mr. Duffer to approve this application under the condition that we receive documentation from the Oklahoma State Board that Mr. Bowen has his license current and that he is in good standing in Oklahoma. And also, I think he will resend one of those recommendation letters.
I'm sorry, may I ask one more question if you don't mind? I just want to be clear. When I call the state of Oklahoma, do I just need to ask them to send to you all verification? Because I'm not sure exactly what the process is.
Mr. Bowen?
Yes, sir.
If they'll send a certification of licensure from their board, and they can send it by email, and they can send that to Ms. Harsh as well, and we'll get it taken care of just as soon as we receive it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more questions from any of the other board members? Okay, Mr. Gribble, would you call our roll?
Mr. Berry,
Yes.
Mr. Duffer,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. McKinney,
Yes.
Mr. Rom,
No.
Mr. Shackford.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 5 yes and 1 no.
Okay, the motion does carry, and this application will be approved under the conditions that we've stated. So, sort of, congratulations, Mr. Bowen.
I pray. Thank y'all very much. I really appreciate it.
All right, we'll take care of. Okay. Mr. Gribble, I think, let's see, there's there one establishment that we have.
Yes, sir. There's one establishment. It's Knoxville Cremation and Memorial Services LLC. Marcus D. Dotson III is listed as a proposed manager. To be located at 10820 Kingston Pike, Suite 9, Knoxville, Tennessee 37934. It's a new establishment. It's owned by a limited liability company, and the owner is Knoxville Cremation Memorial Services LLC, P.O. Box 24217, Knoxville, Tennessee 37933.
Mr. President, this is Fred Berry. With that being in Knoxville, I need to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we have Mr. Dodson with us today, I see. And Mr. Dodson, would you like to address the board, give just a little bit of your background and what you're wanting to do today?
Hello, everyone. Marquise Dotson III. Thank you for having me. Thank you for hearing me and taking my application. Like I said, just applying for a license for the Knoxville Cremation Memorial Services. Yeah, so let's.
All right, we're looking over your application here and the other documents that we have.
Okay.
Mr. President, this is Charles Rom. I've got some questions for Mr. Dotson.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Dotson, this apparently is a storefront location. Kind of give me a breakdown of the location and how you're going to do signage and I've got pictures here. Your location doesn't seem to be large at all. What are you going to be able to do at this location?
It's quite a large office space. I have 2 or 3 office rooms in that location, conference room. Like I said, it's right off Kingston Pike, right there in West Knoxville. As far as signage, I'm really not concerned with signage. It's a requirement to have a big sign on the side of the road. I mean, we can go from there later. But as far as getting the name out and everything, there's other firms that don't have signage, so I don't think signage should be an issue. But just word of mouth and just good old getting to know people and offering a good quality service at a.
If I were to come to your location, if you were to get approved and I were to come to your location, would I be able to come directly into your location off the street, or am I going to have to go through something else to get to where you are?
My location.
So I can open the door from the parking lot and be in your office.
Yes, sir. There's a seating area, I mean, but to the left, as soon as you go past the sitting area, there's my office, yes.
Okay, you've mentioned
What,
offices. What else are you, I mean, are you just planning there, or are you gonna do everything else? Of course, I know you don't have a prep room. I've seen that letter, but the door, the picture of the door that I have here is Prestigious Properties of Knoxville. And you open that door
Yeah.
and it's like there's a desk or something. So will you have to open another door to get into your location?
There's offices in the facility there. Like I said, you walk in the door, there's a sitting area, and there's a receptionist there. Then there's a conference room. Then there's my office. As soon as you walk in the door.
Is it a receptionist for you or for several properties?
Just a receptionist for the landlord, the owner of the building.
So you're a business inside a business.
Yes, sir.
Or that's what you want to be.
I think Mr. Rom's, I would agree with his concerns, and I don't have the rule or the statute right in front of me. If Miss Bendel is still with us, our legal counsel, we have some rules that are very specific about a fixed place of business and being clearly separated from other businesses and having signage. Ms. Bendel, do you have that where that you could state that?
Sure. So our rules indicate that an establishment license should not be granted or renewed unless they have a fixed place of business. It indicates multiple factors which make a fixed place of business. That in terms of signage, the type of professional signage that will be displayed in connection with any goods or services provided. Any evidence that the proposed place of business that suggests that activity other than incidental to the care of preparation of dead human bodies, volume and type of advertising materials, as well as the volume of preparation services or commemorative services provided for non-human remains. So those are all factors the board might want to consider. Like you indicated, the signage and whether or not there's other connections to other businesses are the important factors I would say here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think where the issue is as Mr. Rom stated, this appears to be or that you're proposing a business side of a business. If you had, that entire
It's
suite.
not so much a business side of business. They're just office spaces. I mean, it's just office. It's not really. I mean, I guess you can call it a business, but it's not. It's just office spaces. They're not selling hamburgers in the next room over.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a building or a business inside somebody else's business. Correct?
Yes, that's what I was getting at. I don't think we have any precedent for, there's many storefronts that have been licensed and are operating. I don't think we have any precedents for one exactly like this. Most are, standalone. Well, they all are. They're standalone. They're in, like if you had one of these suites all to yourself where that there could be signage on the outside, or even if you was in a big office building and there was a sign on the outside and then maybe a directory on the inside of all of the many offices maybe. But this concerns me. Did Mr. Rom, did you have any further comments?
No, it just concerns me that the way this is presented and the way the pictures that we have and what he's indicated that if this was approved, we'd have a business inside a business, and that's not a direction we need to go. We need it to be either a freestanding, or it needs to be a complete component of a strip center where they walk in off the parking lot. They're directly in his location. They don't have a receptionist for 2 or 3 other businesses or that kind of thing. Doesn't have a Chuck E. Cheese or something in there with him. But that's my biggest concern is being able to make sure that what we licensure is one, in good taste, and secondly, going to be something that is good for the community, and I just don't think this would be.
I would agree with this particular situation. It's not his business, but it's the location and where it's located inside another, seems to be inside of another business, and I believe I heard Mr. Dodson say that there was a conference room and restrooms, and those are maybe shared by another business also. So that's that's my concern, and a situation like this, we have not. I don't believe this board has approved a place of business such as this with these type of facilities.
I have to ask y'all to consider this and y'all's whatever you're doing going forward, but we're just talking about a conference time. We're not talking about nobody lying in state. We're not talking about repasses or visitations or any of those things of that nature. We're talking about an office space to make a conference. I have a place for embalming with my parents' other establishment, and I think we're just talking about we're talking about a place to make arrangements for people on an economical situations. So I really didn't think this would be an issue when we're just talking, especially with cremations picking up as the way they are. I'm certified to do what I do. I've been doing it for a long time. So yeah, that's I have to ask y'all to, going forward, to strongly reconsider this because somebody else is going to do it.
I understand your situation, your type business, what you're wanting to do. Have no problem with that. It's just it's the location and the signage and all being clearly separated from another business. It doesn't meet, in my opinion, it doesn't meet the statute or the rule. Is any other?
Mr. President, this is Charles Rahm. I think the board kind of tells how I feel. I'll make a motion that this particular establishment license be denied.
Anthony Harris seconds.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rahm and a second by Mr. Harris that this application be denied. Is any more questions from the board members? Comments? Okay, Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Rahm, we lost contact. Something happened.
Did you have a question, Mr. Dodson?
Yeah, Mr. Rahm was speaking and my system or something started buffering, so I didn't hear what he had to say.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Dodson, this is Charles Rahm again. As it's been stated by our president, it's not the fact that you want to go into business. We have no problem with this type of business. It's the location of the business and the statutes that are set forth that we as a board have to adhere to. So it's not something whether we want to or not. If it's not within our statutes, then we can't. So I made a motion to deny your application.
And we had a second to deny the application by Mr. Harris. And I was just about to ask Mr. Gribble to call our roll.
You want me to proceed, Mr. President?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Which Mr. Berry recused himself, so Mr. Duffer, the motion to deny the establishment application. A yes vote is a vote to deny, a no vote is a vote to not deny.
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. McKinney,
Yes.
Mr. Rom,
Yes.
Mr. Shackelford.
Yes.
Mr. President, you have 5 votes to deny the application.
Okay. And the motion is agreed to, and we want you to realize that this is being denied on the grounds that it doesn't meet the rules and regulations as far as a fixed place of business. And you know, we can get that rule and the pertinent statutes to you if you need that.
Let me be clear. The other establishment down the street in the plaza, they're in the plaza just like I would be. But you saying I need to own the whole suite in order to and have my business name on the front of it? An official storefront? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think that's the way that the other storefronts have been approved, that they had, you know, like the entire suite, and there was signage on the outside where the consumer could clearly find, you know, where you're located, and that you're in a place by yourself, so that when somebody walks in, you know, they clearly know where they're headed and what type of business that they're in.
Mr. President, that's rule number 0660-06-.02 on the fixed place of business.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Dodson.
All right. You'll see me again. I'll be back.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that completes all of our license applications. Is that correct, Mr. Gribble?
Yes, the only other thing would be if you have any new business to come before you.
Okay. I know of any new business that we have. Before we adjourn, I'd just like to make some personal comments. Our industry has been through sort of an unprecedented time in all of our lifetimes here in the last few months and in the months ahead. And I want to personally thank all of our licensees for taking care of their client families during these times. And I want to thank Mr. Gribble for trying to get the information out to the licensees regarding all of the various executive orders that have been handed down by the governor. And we appreciate the work that you do. We appreciate our licensees, and thanks to each and every one for taking care of your families. And we hope that all of our licensees and your staff are safe and protected during our pandemic. Our workers are also on the front lines. We're in and out of hospitals and nursing homes. And I just wanted to give everyone a thank you. And with that, unless there's no further comments, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Anthony Harris motions.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Harris and one by, I think, Mr. Rom to adjourn. Thank you all for being with us today.
Mr. President, let's do a roll call and make sure nobody wants to stay longer.
All right.
Mr. Berry.
Definitely yes.
Mr. Duffer,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. McKinney,
Yes.
Mr. Rom,
Yes.
Mr. Shackelford.
Yes.
All voting yes, Mr. President, as
All
expected.
right. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.